There is a moment in every empath's life that no one ever sees. A moment so quiet, so internal, that even the people closest to them miss it completely. It is the moment something inside them dies. Not loudly, not violently, but with the kind of silence that changes a person forever. And from that day onward, the world begins to call them cold, distant, different, unrecognizable. But the truth is far deeper than what the world is willing to admit. When an empath suddenly goes cold, it is not cruelty. It is not bitterness. It is not revenge. It is the death of an old self. The death of a version of them that gave too much, forgave too easily, and trusted people who never deserved access to their soul. And that death is not a tragedy. It is a transformation the world simply doesn't understand. For years, society has fed you the same lie, that empaths are weak, too emotional, too soft, too sensitive to survive in a brutal world. But what if everything you've been told is wrong? What if the warmth you once carried wasn't naivety, but a choice? A choice to stay kind in a world that kept giving you reasons not to be. A choice to keep loving even when love was used against you. A choice to keep believing in people long after they stopped believing in themselves. That is not weakness. That has never been weakness. But every empath reaches a point, a single, unforgettable moment, where something inside them quietly shuts down. It doesn't happen during the betrayal. It happens after. It happens in the silence that follows. It happens the night they lie awake replaying every kindness they gave to someone who was secretly studying how to use it against them. It happens the moment they realize the person they trusted was never confused, never broken, never struggling. They were calculating. And in that moment, something sacred dies. The soft voice that used to whisper, "Maybe they didn't mean it," goes silent. The inner child that kept defending people, kept making excuses for them, kept believing the best in them, finally stops speaking. And what replaces it is not anger. It is not hatred. It is something far more dangerous to the people who hurt them. It is clarity. Cold, sharp, undeniable clarity. And from that day forward, the empath is never the same again. Because once a soft soul learns the truth about people, it does not forget. It does not soften. It does not return to who it used to be. It simply becomes something the world was never prepared for, a kind heart with eyes that finally see everything. Long before the betrayal ever arrived, the empath was already exhausted. Not from the world, not from work, not from the noise of daily life, but from something far quieter, the slow, invisible weight of always being the understanding one. The one who listens, the one who forgives, the one who explains themselves over and over, hoping that this time, the other person will finally see them clearly. But they never do. If you are an empath, you know this pattern intimately. You have lived inside it for years. You over-explain because you are terrified of being misunderstood. You overfeel because your heart refuses to shut down even when it should. You overforgive because you keep believing that people are simply going through something, that their cruelty is temporary, that their coldness is a phase, that their silence has a reason. And so you wait. You stay. You give. You soften yourself again and again, hoping your patience will eventually be rewarded with the same love you keep giving away. But it never is. And the most painful part is not the betrayal itself. It is the fact that, deep down, you sensed it long before it happened. You felt it in the small inconsistencies. You felt it in the way they looked at you when they thought you weren't watching. You felt it in the conversations that suddenly went cold. You felt it in the energy shifts they could never hide from you. Your intuition was screaming. Your body was warning you. Your spirit was begging you to step back. But you silenced it. You silenced the most sacred voice inside you. Not because you were foolish, but because you were loyal. Because you didn't want to believe that someone you loved could be capable of what your gut already knew. And that is the tragedy of the empath. You did not get betrayed because you couldn't see it coming. You got betrayed because you chose to override what you saw, hoping love would change what your intuition already understood. You loved people who studied your kindness like a map. They watched what made you soft. They learned what made you stay. They memorized your wounds, not to heal them, but to know exactly where to press when they needed control. And you gave them everything. Your time, your patience, your forgiveness, your peace. You gave until there was nothing left of you. And still, you wondered why you felt invisible. Because that is the ache no one ever talks about. being the understanding one in a world full of people who never once tried to understand you back, being the safe space for everyone while having no safe space of your own, being the healer in every room while quietly bleeding in silence. You spent years pouring into people who would never fill you. You spent years explaining yourself to people who were never listening. You spent years loving people who only loved the version of you that served them. And somewhere along the way, you stopped recognizing yourself. You became a stranger inside your own life. You smiled when you were breaking. You comforted others when you needed comfort. You stayed strong when every part of you wanted to collapse. And no one ever asked if you were okay, because you were always the one asking everyone else. That is the silent suffering of an empath. Not loud, not visible, not dramatic, just a quiet, slow, exhausting erosion of the soul. And it continues, year after year, relationship after relationship, betrayal after betrayal, until one day, something inside you finally breaks the cycle. But before that day comes, there is something deeper you must understand. Because what happened to you was never random. It was never bad luck. It was a pattern hidden beneath every betrayal you have ever lived through. And once you see it, you can never unsee it. Empaths do not attract betrayal by accident. They attract it by design. Not because they are cursed, not because they are broken, not because they choose the wrong people, as the world so carelessly says, but because their energy carries something rare in a world full of emotionally starving souls: openness. Real, unguarded, undefended openness. And in a world where most people are emotionally hungry but emotionally untrained, that openness becomes a beacon. Predators feel it. Narcissists feel it. Emotionally immature people feel it. Manipulators feel it. They may not understand it. They may not even consciously recognize it, but their nervous system does. They sense the empath the way a hunter senses warmth in the cold. They don't see a person, they see an opportunity. A safe place to unload their chaos. A mirror that will reflect them back as something better than they are. A heart soft enough to absorb their damage without demanding accountability. And so they come, again and again. Different faces, different names, different stories, but always the same emotional contract underneath. They take, you give. They withdraw, you chase. They wound, you understand. They disappear, you wait. They return, you forgive. And the cycle repeats, dressed in new clothes, wearing a new smile, telling a new lie. This is the pattern no one ever talks about. The empath is not betrayed because they are weak. They are betrayed because they are valuable in a world that does not know how to handle value without exploiting it. Your softness is not a flaw. It is a frequency. And the wrong people are tuned to it. But here is the deeper truth, the truth that begins everything. The wound is not the betrayal. The wound is the repetition. It is not what they did to you. It is the silent agreement you kept making with yourself, again and again, that allowed them to keep doing it. The agreement to stay. The agreement to forgive without change. The agreement to mistake their potential for their reality. The agreement to keep loving people who only loved your usefulness. That is the pattern. That is the cage. And the moment an empath finally sees it, truly sees it, something inside them begins to wake up. Not in anger, not in revenge, but in a quiet, terrifying clarity that the world will never be able to manipulate again. There is a specific night in every empath's life that changes everything. It does not announce itself. It does not arrive with thunder. There is no final argument, no dramatic confrontation, no breaking of dishes or slamming of doors. It comes quietly, almost gently, the kind of quiet that feels louder than any scream you've ever heard. And when it arrives, the empath knows. Something inside them knows. It usually happens late at night. The world is asleep. The room is still. And the empath is sitting alone with a thought they have been avoiding for years. Maybe they are staring at the ceiling. Maybe they are looking at their phone, waiting for a message that will never come the way they need it to. Maybe they are replaying a conversation that ended with them, once again, being the one who apologized for being hurt. And in that stillness, something finally cracks open. Not their heart, their illusion. For the first time, they don't see the person. They see the pattern. They don't see the excuses. They see the design. They don't see what went wrong. They see what was always wrong. And in that single moment of clarity, every memory rearranges itself. Every red flag they ignored suddenly stands tall. Every gut feeling they silenced suddenly speaks. Every small betrayal they excused suddenly connects to the next one, and the next one, and the next one, until the entire picture becomes impossible to deny. And something inside them stops. They stop negotiating. They stop explaining. They stop rehearsing the perfect words to make someone finally understand them. They stop preparing their pain in soft language so it doesn't inconvenience the people who caused it. They stop shrinking themselves into a version small enough to be loved by people who were never going to love them anyway. Something that used to beg simply stops begging. There are no tears in this moment. That surprises them too. After years of crying, after years of breaking, after years of pleading silently with the universe to make people see them, the night it finally ends, there are no tears. Just a strange, almost frightening calm. The kind of calm that doesn't come from peace. It comes from finality. It is the calm of a soul that has finished waiting. The soft voice inside them, the one that used to whisper, maybe they'll change. Maybe they didn't mean it. Maybe if I love them harder, they'll finally love me back, goes silent. Not because it died, but because it finally learned. It learned that some people were never confused. Some people were never struggling. Some people were never going to wake up. They knew exactly what they were doing. They just knew you would forgive them. And in that silence, something is born. Something the empath has never felt before. Not anger, not hatred, not even sadness, but perception. Pure, undistorted perception. The ability to see people as they are, not as the empath wished them to be. The ability to feel the energy in a room and trust it without arguing with it. The ability to hear what someone is really saying beneath their words. This is the moment pain transforms into power. The moment heartbreak becomes vision. The moment a soft soul finally accepts a brutal truth, that being kind never required them to be blind. That being loving never required them to be foolish. That being open never required them to be defenseless. And from that night on, the empath walks differently through the world. They speak less. They observe more. They no longer chase. They no longer explain. They no longer perform their pain for people who were never going to validate it. Because once you have seen the pattern, truly seen it, you cannot unsee it. And you cannot return to the person you were before you saw it. That night does not destroy the empath. It reveals them. What follows is a strange in-between. The empath is no longer who they were, but not yet who they will become. They are standing in the silent space between two identities. The soft soul who once gave everything, and the awakened soul who is still learning what self-respect even feels like. It is uncomfortable. It is unfamiliar. It is, in many ways, lonelier than the betrayal itself. Because for the first time in their life, they are not performing for anyone. They begin to notice things they never noticed before. The way they used to apologize for having needs. The way they used to thank people for the bare minimum. The way they used to over-explain a simple no until it sounded like a request for permission. The way they used to laugh nervously when someone crossed a line, hoping their softness would correct the disrespect on its own. They see all of it now, and they cannot believe how long they lived that way. So slowly, almost without announcement, things begin to change. Boundaries appear, not as walls, but as quiet decisions. They stop replying to messages that drain them. They stop attending conversations that consume them. They stop showing up for people who only remember them when they need something. And the strangest part? They don't feel guilty anymore. The guilt that used to control their entire life suddenly loses its grip. Because they finally understand, guilt was never their conscience. It was their conditioning. They stopped chasing closure. That is one of the first deaths of the old self. The old empath needed closure like air. They needed the final conversation, the honest apology, the moment of acknowledgement, the proof that the pain was real. But the new empath understands something the old one never could. Closure is not given. Closure is chosen. It is the moment you stop asking someone to validate the wound they pretended not to cause. They stop performing warmth for people who never earned it. The smile that used to come automatically now requires a reason. The kindness that used to flow without question now flows with discernment. They are still warm. They are still loving. They are still deeply soft underneath. But that softness is no longer a public offering. It is a private gift, reserved, protected, sacred. The contrast is staggering. The old empath gave to be loved. The new empath gives only where love already exists. The old empath stayed to be chosen. The new empath leaves the moment they feel unseen. The old empath confused exhaustion with devotion. The new empath understands that real love does not deplete you, it restores you. The old empath asked, "Why don't they love me the way I love them?" The new empath asks, "Why was I loving people who didn't even know how to love themselves?" And in this quiet rebirth, the empath discovers something they were never taught: that silence is not coldness. Silence is self-respect. Silence is the first language of a soul that has finally stopped explaining itself to people who were never listening. Silence is the boundary that does not need to be announced. Silence is the answer the old empath was too afraid to give. They are not who they were. They are not yet who they will become. But for the first time in their life, they are no longer abandoning themselves to be accepted by others. And that, more than anything, is where the real transformation begins. The world will misunderstand the empath now. They will call them cold, distant, hardened, changed. They will whisper that something is wrong, that the empath has lost their light, that they are not who they used to be. And the empath will hear all of it and say nothing. Because for the first time in their life, they no longer feel the need to defend themselves against people who were never paying attention in the first place. But the world is wrong. The empath is not cold. They are clear. There is a difference, and only those who have lived it will ever understand it. Coldness is the absence of feeling. Clarity is feeling everything and finally knowing what to do with it. The empath did not lose their warmth. They learned where to spend it. They did not become bitter. They became precise. And precision, to people who once benefited from their blindness, will always look like cruelty. What the world reads as distance is actually discernment. Discernment that was sharpened, not in books, not in lectures, not in self-help quotes, but in pain. The kind of pain that rewires a person from the inside. The kind of pain that teaches you to read silence the way others read words. The kind of pain that makes you fluent in a language most people will never have to learn. The language of human behavior beneath the mask. The empath now sees things others miss. They notice the slight pause before a lie. The unnatural softness in a voice that wants something. The eyes that smile while the mouth performs sincerity. The compliments that arrive only when something is being asked of them. The sudden interest in their life after months of silence. They see manipulation now the way a forensic expert sees a fingerprint: clear, identifiable, undeniable. And once you can read people at that level, no charm can reach you the way it used to. But the most terrifying gift the empath develops is not perception. It is restraint. They no longer react. That is the new power. The old empath used to explode, defend, cry, justify, prove. The new empath simply observes. They let people reveal themselves. They let words hang in the air. They let silence do the work that arguments used to do. Because they have learned the most advanced form of emotional control: the refusal to give their energy to anyone who has not earned it. Strategic silence becomes their language. Not the silence of fear, not the silence of shutting down, but the silence of a person who has nothing left to prove. They do not announce their boundaries. They enforce them with absence. They do not warn people. They remove themselves. They do not threaten. They simply disappear from the lives of those who were taking advantage of their presence. And the people who once underestimated them are left talking to a version of the empath that no longer exists. Their sensitivity did not disappear. That is what manipulators always get wrong. They assume that once they betray an empath, the empath becomes hardened, closed, emotionally dead. But sensitivity is not a weakness that can be destroyed. It is a frequency that can be refined. And in the empath, it has now been refined into something sharper than any weapon. Intuition that does not second-guess itself. They feel more than ever. They just no longer feel out loud for the wrong people. Their compassion still exists, but it is no longer automatic. Their kindness still flows, but it is no longer a public resource. Their love is still vast, but it is no longer scattered across people who treat it like background noise. Their softness has become protected, and that protection, to the world, looks like distance. To the empath, it feels like peace. This is the quiet power no one warned them about. The power that comes after the breaking. The power that grows in the silence. The power that does not announce itself, does not seek revenge, does not demand recognition, but cannot be deceived again. Because the empath now understands what the world refuses to admit. Sensitivity, once awakened, is not soft. It is surgical. And from this place, something even deeper begins to take shape. A version of the empath that no manipulator, no narcissist, no smooth-talking betrayer will ever be able to reach again. They walk into rooms now and feel the entire emotional architecture of it within seconds. They sense intentions before words are spoken. They know when someone is performing affection and when someone is genuinely safe. And the most powerful part? They no longer feel the need to confirm what they already know. They simply act on it. They no longer argue. Arguing was the language of the old self, the version that still believed people could be convinced of the truth. The new empath knows that truth needs no defense. People who want to misunderstand you will misunderstand you no matter how many words you offer them. So the empath stops offering. They let their silence speak. They let their absence explain. They let time reveal what their voice no longer needs to. They no longer chase. Not relationships. Not closure. Not validation. Not apologies. Not people who finally realize what they lost. The chase ended the night they realized that anyone who needed to be chased was never theirs to begin with. They walk forward now without looking back, not out of pride, but out of peace. The kind of peace that only comes when you finally stop trying to be understood by people who benefit from misunderstanding you. They observe. That is their new posture in the world. They watch how people speak when they think no one is listening. They watch how people behave when something is taken from them. They watch how people treat those who cannot do anything for them. They remember everything, every word, every shift in tone, every broken promise, every small betrayal disguised as a misunderstanding. They remember it all, but they react to almost none of it. Because reaction is the currency of the old self, and the new self has learned the value of stillness. This is the empath's final form. Not loud, not angry, not vengeful, just unreachable in the ways that matter most. Calm where they used to be anxious. Quiet where they used to over-explain. Steady where they used to break. They are still kind, but their kindness now has a gatekeeper. They are still loving, but their love now has standards. They are still soft, but their softness now has a spine. And here is the philosophical truth the world will never be ready to admit. The betrayal did not break the empath. It built them. The wound did not weaken them. It revealed them. Every person who underestimated them, every person who used their kindness, every person who mistook their patience for permission, they all contributed to the very thing they will now fear most. An empath who has finally seen the truth. The world thought it had silenced something soft. It thought it had broken something fragile. It thought it had won. But what the world did not understand is that softness, when it survives betrayal, does not die. It evolves. It deepens. It hardens at the core while remaining gentle at the surface. It becomes something the world has no defense against, a heart that feels everything, but is fooled by nothing. That is the empath now. Quieter than before, wiser than before, softer in love, but harder in discernment. They do not seek revenge. They do not need it. Because the greatest revenge a betrayed empath can ever have is becoming someone who can never be played again. And in becoming that, they accidentally become the one thing the world tried so hard to destroy, unshakable. So if you have ever been called cold after a lifetime of being kind, understand this. Your coldness is not the absence of love. It is the presence of self-worth finally arriving. It is the sound of a soul that has stopped abandoning itself to be accepted by people who were never willing to see it. You did not become harsh. You became aware. You did not lose your softness. You learned where it belongs. And that is not a tragedy. That is the quiet victory the world was never meant to witness. Because the truth is simple, and it will outlive every person who underestimated you. The kindest hearts, once betrayed, become the hardest to deceive. If you saw yourself anywhere in this story, subscribe quietly. No noise. No promises. Just a small acknowledgement that you recognized your own reflection. And in the comments, tell me the moment you finally stopped explaining yourself to people who were never listening. Not for them. For you. Because some silences are not endings. They are the beginning of a soul that will never lose itself again.